IMANI-GIZ is this afternoon holding a dialogue series on the African continental trade area. I'll take you free trade area and on what it means for Ghanaian businesses. As I said earlier, the overall objective of AfCFTA is to create a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of business persons and investment, as well as to pave way for the acceleration of economic growth. The 2-hour virtual event, which will be live on JoyNews now, aims at getting the business community the leverage to the free trade area. My colleague Winston Amwa is standing by for us. Let's take you right now to Alisa Hotel.
Holding the fort for us, and very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to the IMANI-GIZ Reform Dialogue on what the African Continental Free Trade Area means for Ghanaian businesses. And you know that with African businesses or African countries having an intra-trade percentage of 15%, now that rates unfavorably if you consider the fact that Europe has 67% and Asia 58%. And that's why for many of you, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it's very important because you see this as an opportunity of trading among African countries and increasing Africa's collective GDP of 2.5 trillion to in excess of 29 trillion. Among other things, the African Continental Free Trade Area seeks to attain the following: progressive elimination of tariffs on 90% of products within 5 to 15 years, depending on the economic status of participating countries. But for us this afternoon, the focus is on what AfCFTA means for Ghana's economy. What does AfCFTA mean for Ghanaian industries? And what are the supply chain diversification opportunities for Ghana? The president, as he addressed the nation yesterday, talked about the fact that Ghana is being exporting to African countries, and he hopes that with the coming into force of AfCFTA, Ghanaian businesses would be able to take advantage of that and grow Ghana's economy. Are we ready to take advantage of that? And that is the conversation we're having this afternoon. My name is Winston Amwa, and we get straight into deliberations. We'd invite IMANI Senior Fellow, Professor Godfrey Bobking, who will be giving us the opening remarks. And we welcome with a round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for this opportunity. All protocol observed. This afternoon, we are all gathered here on an important development on the continent of Africa, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Perhaps the most single development on the continent since the setting up of the Organization for African Unity, now African Union. But the mere coming into force of the AfCFTA necessarily does not mean Africa has arrived. Perhaps there's a sense of optimism that Africa is rising. So far, the theoretical gains or benefits or advantages have been highlighted across the board by academics, industry practitioners, lawyers, business people, and the youth. But much of what has been talked about represent intentions. We have hypothesized gains from the AfCFTA, but there's a lot of work to be done to actually translate these theoretical or hypothesized benefits or gains into actual in a manner that creates decent and sustainable jobs for Africa, that is considered the young continent with more youth than any other continent. Translating the theoretical benefits into actual must tackle inequality and limit the poverty of opportunities on the continent that also fuels migration, insecurity, and anxiety. For the Ghanaian businesses, how do we leverage on AfCFTA with a combined GDP in excess of $2 trillion and a combined population of over 1.2 billion which is projected to hit 1.4 billion by 2040, to boost our post-COVID-19 economic recovery efforts. The question is, how much of the fine details of AfCFTA do you know that you could take advantage of? We have gathered here to understand how enabling is the enabling environment to our SMEs that represent the job creation capacity of our economy. So we are able to derive the maximum benefits given the intended fiscal losses that would accrue to the state as a result of the tariff reforms with the implementation. To this end, IMANI and GIZ has invited business owners, financial institutions, and allied entities to the second IMANI-GIZ Reform Dialogue series to examine specifically the operational aspects of the AfCFTA. This dialogue seeks to provide information to the Ghanaian business community on how they can practically take advantage of the continental free trade area, whilst we also assess the opportunities and constraints of the AfCFTA for the Ghanaian economy, industry, and the wider investor community. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Godfred Bopping. I like it when the finance professor says we're not here to hypothesize and engage in theories, but we are here to practicalize everything and find out how enabling is the enabling environment. I like that, because consistently you would hear politicians say, we seek to create an enabling environment. We seek to create an enabling environment. It's become more of a cliche, but how enabling is that enabling environment that we consistently talk of creating? How can all of us gather here ensure that practically Ghanaian businesses can take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? And that's the reason why we are gathered here this afternoon. Thank you once again, Professor Godfred Bopping. At this moment, we will have the welcome address from the head of cooperation of the German embassy, Dorothy Dinkeleka, who joins us via Zoom. And we shall welcome her with a round of applause as she joins us via Zoom to give us the welcome address.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, all other protocols observed. It is my pleasure to be here with you today, unfortunately only virtually, and to open the second IMANI-GIZ Reform Dialogue supported by the German government on AfCFTA and its impact on Ghanaian businesses. 1 year of COVID-19 has revealed once again the importance of global supply chains and trade integration. The demand of basic foodstuff, medication, and medical equipment skyrocketed, while at the same time, countries closed their borders, which further impeded the free trade, or the free flow of trade. Apologies. Africa is home to about 17% of the world's population. However, intra-African trade is the lowest of all the regions of the world. One of the main keys to overcome this is the African Continental Free Trade Area. This constitutes the largest free trade area in the world. Its implementation is thus timely, since it has the potential to cushion the economic damage caused by the global pandemic and also to facilitate the necessary exchange of goods and services. AfCFTA further acts as a catalyst to transforming economies across the continent and to deepen regional integration between countries. It connects 1.3 billion people across more than 50 countries with an estimated combined GDP valued of $3.4 trillion. The Pan-African Free Trade Area is not only a lighthouse project of the African Union, but also a framework that brings together many different actors on the continent under the umbrella of regional integration. Nevertheless, a framework alone is not sufficient. AfCFTA needs to be effectively implemented. It needs to be practiced and lived every day. This is why we would like to engage today with the Ghanaian private sector to bring to the fore their needs and challenges with regards to AfCFTA in order to help their economic activities. Ladies and gentlemen, Ghana is playing a pioneering role in the implementation of AfCFTA. Together with Kenya, it was the first country to ratify the agreement, and most importantly, it hosts the Secretariat of the AfCFTA. The AfCFTA agreement can make a decisive contribution to Ghana's successful industrialization and strengthen the country as a regional trade hub. Regional economic integration through the AfCFTA will enable many Ghanaian producers to source more inputs from other African countries, while at the same time tap into the new export market on the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the German government has been supporting the AfCFTA negotiations and the AU Framework Program boosting intra-African trade since 2016. For Germany, trade and regional integration have a historical significance. Regional economic integration was the starting point for European unification and for peaceful coexistence in Europe after 2 world wars. Support for AfCFTA is therefore a priority of the German government, and it is a cornerstone of German development cooperation. German cooperation not only provides support on the continental level, but also provides support to the Ghanaian government as well as Ghanaian businesses. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, events like today's are an important platform for dialogue among key stakeholders from the public and the private sector to support the implementation process. I'm very keen to follow the dialogue, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dorothy. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to begin the conversation. I talked about how we're going to make it very interactive for all of us. And so I have lots of you joining us. I know some of you have joined us via Zoom also. It's the nature of the world today, so it doesn't hurt if you join us via Zoom. And later on, we'll be picking some of your questions as well as questions from the Ridge Arena here at Alisa Hotel. And so let me introduce those who've joined us and will be part of the panelists for today's discussion. Professor Alexander Dodu is the Director General of the Ghana Standards Authority. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Dodu. Louise Affle is Executive Director of AfCFTA Policy Network. Thank you very much, Louise, for joining us. And Dr. Joseph Obeng is the President of the Ghana Union of Traders Association, GUTA. I am sure they will be excited about AfCFTA. Mr. Naliban Unjagi is Chief Executive Officer of Agriculture and More. He's also joined us. Mr. John Ewua is the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Association of Bankers. Is here. And Francis Holy is International Business Director of Casapreco. Thank you very, very much, all of you, for joining us. And I'd like to start off with you, Mr. John Ewua, because money is at the center of everything. And so you know that about 90% of Ghanaian businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises, and they usually would face challenges in sourcing funds as compared to the large firms and multinational enterprises. Now, have banks seen any rise in demand for funds since AfCFTA commenced officially on the 1st of January 2021?
Have banks, if you could take the question again, please.
So I'm asking you whether the banks have seen a rise in the demand of funds and how the banking industry has positioned itself to fund all businesses involved in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Thank you very much. And Thank you to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in to this, I would say, very important policy dialogue. As a banking industry, my membership, we all stand ready to assist to our utmost capacities in the rollout and operationalization of AfCFTA. The issue is, I always say it takes two to, if you permit me, whilst I'm speaking, it takes two to tango, and it's a demand and supply when it comes to provision of financial services. Banks stand ready, and what we are looking out for is for the business community to also stand prepared as they approach their various financial institutions to pursue the agenda of AfCFTA. As banks, we know that we need to change some things. First thing that comes to mind is hitherto, if you call the bank managing director and he wasn't in town, as in Ghana, he's either in Europe, in America, chasing a correspondent bank because the direction of trade was to the Western world, Asia, and Americas. Now, Africa is moving from discussion of wars, peace, and security and the like, and we are now moving on to trade and investment. So the direction of traffic of our travels and the creation of our networks as financial institutions must also be broadened to a lot more focusing on the Africa continent, because if that is where the direction of trade is going to be in the future, then as banks, we must create the right partnerships, the right networks to facilitate that trade with our counterparties in other countries in Africa.
Having to create the right networks, having to position yourself. But I do know that in your previous life as MD of a bank, the moment a new government came into office and talked about one district, one factory, even before the government settled, you were with the government saying, we are prepared to do this and that for you. Is it the same when it comes to the Africa Continental Free Trade Area?
I should think so. From where I sit and the fact that I sit in most of these important meetings, the discussion has been one of how do we facilitate this process. And as I said, because it's a two-way traffic, whilst the banks are seeking to change, and now I know a lot of banks have already set up after desks, which means within even the export department or the corporate department of the banks, some, as I know now, we are in March, have already set up after desks to deal only to just the needs and requirements of companies that are that want to take advantage of the provisions of the AfCFTA. But whilst the banks are seeking to change, we need the business community to also tag along. We cannot do what we used to do years or months back in the arena of free AfCFTA. Why do I say this? We are talking about businesses thinking global now. So your competitor is not the next company on the Spintex Road. Your competitor may be in Onitsha, in Mombasa, in Kampala. So how do you build scale in Ghana so you can take advantage of whatever provisions there is? So yes, the banks stand ready, but banks also deal with depositors' funds. So we want to support businesses that are also prepared to take advantage and are well grounded on the, as well.
Great. So he expects businesses to think global. It's a demand and supply thing. The banks are ready. They've set up desks. They're waiting on businesses to actually take advantage of the situation. Let me get to you, Mr. Wunjagi, who's CEO of Agriculture and More. And I'd like to understand whether you're taking advantage of this opportunity available to you. We've consistently talked about how agriculture is our backbone. How are you taking advantage of this?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think that for the after, immediately we started trading, the excitement was there, the enthusiasm and the sense of optimism. It's something that I believe that a lot of us in the agricultural sector would be very, very excited about. But looking further into it, there are a lot of, in terms of its operationalization, there are a lot of things that I dare say that a lot of SMEs locally, including those in the agricultural space, do not have an understanding or an appreciation of. So for instance, you're an organization, you're under the ETLS, which is under the regional trading and the ECOWAS. There were several harmonization codes that you could use. Currently, some of those harmonization codes are missing. What are some of the ways by which people can actually get to understand what are some of the ways that some of them can actually come to understand what exactly it means? Those of us in the agricultural sector also have a lot of questions to ask ourselves, because even though there's this opportunity that we all anticipate, there is also the aspect of competition, like Mr. Ewa mentioned earlier on. Because what's happening now is that majority of the African countries are all agrarian countries, and that is more or less like the backbone of every economy. So the question we ask ourselves now is, based on our current production levels, are we competitive enough? In terms of our the various value chains that we have, what are the various value chains that we are actually taking more seriously, or what are the value chains that we have identified that we are going to produce and be able to get the economies of scale? First, beyond that also, we are also looking at the value addition aspect of it, because all other countries would also be looking at ways and means by which they can also add value. What are some of the crops that we have a comparative advantage for which we can take advantage of? And these are some of the questions that keep lingering on, especially for those of us in the agricultural value chain, because at the end of the day, if AfCFTA is going to be effective, I personally would measure AfCFTA based on the impact that it's having on the people in the various operational areas that we operate in, and not necessarily a metric that is mentioned at the national level, which ends up being overly politicized. So those of us in the agricultural space are also very wary of the fact that AfCFTA opens us to a lot of competition, but that notwithstanding, we also believe that there's also that opportunity that we can harness based on our production systems.
Okay, so you've talked about the fact that we have opportunities, and you've also asked that question, what is our competitive advantage? Before I move away from you, I believe you've been finding out areas where Ghana has competitive advantage. What are those areas when it comes to agriculture, which you say a lot of the African countries say they're an agrarian economy?
Okay, so generally I think that when you take the agricultural space and you look at the Ghanaian food, I would dare say that a lot of African countries can eat what we have. They can eat what we have, but we may not necessarily be able to eat what they have by way of food. And the reason why I say that is, I think that on a large scale, when you take an example, the roots and tubers. The roots and tubers is an area that we can actually take very good advantage of. We have yams that are produced within the yam belt, and we are the second highest producer of yams, and at the same time also we are the highest exporter of yams currently. Now looking at the other side of it also, Nigeria produces more, but they do export less, which means that we also have the potential of taking advantage of the yam exports. But it cannot end there, but we also have to do value addition. And value addition cannot stay with just the roots and tubers, it has to go across board. Now the key thing, and the thing that in my personal view would make our agricultural space a lot more competitive, if we look at if we attend to it with regards to the various value chains, and not looking at the various individual ad hoc processes or interventions that we have. Because if you put in an ad hoc measure, that means that it's definitely going to affect another aspect of the entire value chain, which probably has not been taken cognizance of. So in my personal view, we need to take a look at, a critical look at a lot of these value chains and determine which of the value chains we're actually moving into. The sad thing is that not many of us have been involved in the discussions and negotiations with regards to AfCFTA. And as a result of that, all the, let's say 90% of some of these goods or commodities that have been left out are things that we also need to ensure that we start working hard on. So the roots and tubers are one, the cereals and grains are another. We also have the opportunity for livestock as well. But and that's an area that we can actually develop by way of production systems.
And how about the threats?
Threats generally for me would, the AfCFTA in itself is a threat. You know, I identify AfCFTA in itself as a threat, because currently majority of SMEs do not even understand what AfCFTA is all about. So if we're even going to be able to take advantage of it, that part of information is critical to ensuring that we are even able to put in place strategies that would be able to harness and take advantage of some of these opportunities. So AfCFTA in itself is a threat. Now the other thing also is that every country, let me take South Africa for instance, once you look at your value chain, you're able to produce, you add value, and then you're able to send it out. When you look at the route to market for a lot of these South African companies, it is a lot easier. Why? They have the likes of ShopRite, they have the likes of Game, who would gladly take their products outside. You can just do a cursory visit, pay a cursory visit to any of these retail outlets, and you'd realize that majority of the products that are on the shelves of both ShopRite and Game are South African origin, which means that they have developed themselves so much so that they have a way by which they can put some of their own products onto the international market through these outlets. Unfortunately, a lot of our production systems locally have not been developed to the standard that may be required by some of these outlets, but we definitely need to start from somewhere. And that is one of the things that we, as industry in the agribusiness sector, will have to do currently.
Well, talking about standards, it takes me to only one person, Professor Alex Dodu. I'll get to you shortly, Professor Alex Dodu. But let me acknowledge the presence of Kwabena Ofer with the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana. Thank you very much, Kwabena, for joining us. Samson Awingobeg Asaki is Executive Director of the Ghana Importers and Exporters Association. Thank you very much for joining us. We have Richard Helsman here, who is Reform Partner at GIZ. If Richard is here, okay. And we have representatives from the Swiss Embassy, the Embassy of Denmark, the UK Ghana Chamber, and the British High Commission. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. Now, let me get to you, Professor Alex Dodu. And we've had this conversation before, ensuring standardization. Here is AfCFTA, and you've heard from the previous speaker talk about it also posing a threat to us, because the question arises, can we meet the standards? What would you be doing to ensure we meet the standards?
Thank you very much for your question. Thank you very much for your question. I hope I'm clear enough. Well, I think I have 6 kilometers by me, so I'm going to address the issue of standards and whether we can meet the standards. First, by saying that in several value chains, we do meet the best available international standards. We can look at bottled water, soft drinks, but under AfCFTA, and considering specifically small and medium-scale enterprises, the first question is, do they even understand the standards regime as captured in Annex 6 of the AfCFTA agreement? I am certain that very few have heard of that, and that is where it starts. Secondly, even when you can bring all of them together, do they have the capacity? We had a meeting with the AGI and the German industry in February this year, and the question we pose is, does industry understand the requirements of standards for trading under the AfCFTA? And if they have, can they even afford? And where they can afford, can they have access to those services? You have farmers who need to get their produce right to the international markets. And of course, whichever way we look at it, standards can be used as a protectionist mechanism, a technical barrier to trade. And several countries do it, and I'm not allowed to mention any country names. My take is that as a country, we need to ensure that the AfCFTA does not become a risk to us, because the risks are there. If we do not enforce our standards regime, we could very easily become a dumping ground for substandard products or products which have been subsidized by their governments to be traded here, the so-called dumping effect. That would take our manufacturers and our traders out of business. So yes, the big English have been done, the treaties have been written, but we need to be having these conversations. What do we need to do to ensure that the Ghanaian trader have or has a competitive advantage under AfCFTA? First are the value chains. I believe that we have the products, but they may need to be aggregated. Fortunately, we have the Ghana Commodity Exchange. It's working very well for certain types of grains. We can grade them, we can certify the warehouses, and we can get the products aggregated for exports. These sort of conversations cannot be government-led, but they must be government-facilitated. How do we bring all the maize farmers to ensure that they come together so that we buy maize of assured quality for exports? That would help us go into the South African market. And I think we need to put away the shyness. In addition to competition, we can make a lot of money from collaboration. Ghana has advantage in pineapples. What does it take to send it over there? So a simple answer is that yes, AfCFTA is an advantage and it's an opportunity, but it's a huge risk. And if we sleepwalk into the risk by not having the standards infrastructure, by not making standardization and related services available and, importantly, affordable to industry, by not enforcing standards so that substandard goods and dumped products are removed from the market, literally the Ghanaian trader, the Ghanaian manufacturer will be a sitting duck at the risk of external forces. So our take is that we need to be proactive. We need to make it happen. These things will not happen by just mere conferences or conversations, even though they are all dialogues. They are very useful, and I thank Franklin for the dialogue. But I believe that how do you translate the dialogue that my mother in the village can understand it and work with it? How can government hold the hands of the business community? Because I say that the only way I will say AfCFTA is working very well in Ghana. Casapreco has done well, Gandu have done well. But give me 2 traders from my village. Let them export any products from Ghana to Lomé under AfCFTA, then I'll clap. And last but not the least, most of our wonderful products suffer from inability to package it to meet international markets. And they are too small to afford the funding needed to provide this sort of packaging. So in addition to the 1D, 1F and everything, we need to have, as it were, a corn mill sort of arrangements where people can bring their products to be packaged and exported. These are the practical, life-changing things we need to do. And they go beyond the treaty. They are just real life.
To the representative from Casapreco, we learn from their experience. But Professor Dudu, you've talked about the fact that how do we make this so simple that your grandmother in the village can understand. You've also talked about the fact that government should be facilitating. Yes, so as Director General of the Ghana Standards Authority, you're ensuring that we have standards when it comes to everything that we practically consume. How are you facilitating this conversation?
So we are facilitating it in maybe 3 main ways.
Okay.
One is enforcement, and we have declared this year a year of enforcement. But we believe enforcement itself only helps when it hits the pocket. So within a week or so, you see every day on the front page of the Daily Graphic and other news media, the available standards we have and our mark of conformity. But in addition to that, what we have offered is that rather than compete with our sister agency, the Food and Drugs Authority, we have harmonized the way we work to have a one-stop shop. And I'm pleased to say that the Ghana Export Promotion Authority has also joined the conversation. That for exporters, they should just go to GEPA and we would meet behind the back screen and do what it takes, because it's frustrating. Go to GEPA, go to Ghana Chamber of Industry, go to FDA. It's unneeded stress. So those are 2 things. We're also offering what we call graduated certification. The FDA is doing progressive licensing. How do you bring the lowest of the low onto the chain? And as we speak, thanks to SECO and the Swiss government, we now are translating our cashew standards into pictorial forms. We are doing the same for shea butter. We are doing the same for shea butter, cashew, maize, okra, garden eggs, bitters, and a few other products. So that if you want to export bitters, there is a standard. Fortunately, it meets any international standards. And even though I say it jokingly, we even have standards now for aquatation. So if you want to export aquatation, talk to us. We'll help you meet the international standards. We would help you ensure that your products do not have forbidden substances. Because most countries have things that for health and safety reasons, they would not want them to be in the products at a certain level. They must be below those levels. And last but not the least, we would help you test, and we will do it in real time. Because no matter all the big words, it has to be accepted that the delays from government agencies giving service to exporters is a drain, because your fish is ready for exports. If you don't get the answers in 24 hours, the fish is bad. And even though we are doing better, I believe that there's a lot more we have to do. It is business we are talking about. It's not just talk. Businessmen understand only one thing, the dollar. And the dollar only comes, one, if they export properly through the right channels, get their goods in the other end, and the money comes. Then they'll buy more of our services, and hopefully this country will move to a better place.
Great. So you talk about the fact that you're liaising with the Food and Drugs Authority, and you're meeting at the back and making sure that the right things are done. You've also asked the question whether Ghanaian businesses even understand standards. I'm just curious, all the things that you've talked about, are these discussions you've held with Ghanaian businesses, or these are just plans that you have?
I think Dr. Obin and several businessmen will say we have had discussions, but I take it that these are not enough. And one of the things we just did this year was to sit with the Daily Graphic and say, you are the biggest newspaper. You have a nice front page, it's prominent. Charges. But let's on the weekly basis, as in every day, have something relating to what we do. It is not enough. Definitely not enough. When it comes to most of the value chains, we spent the past 2 years going to every village promoting aflatoxin sensitivity. We've met over maybe 30,000 people. But these things cost money, a lot of money. And it's fair to say that we have to raise it ourselves. And so sometimes, even though the desire is there, and then you have young men and women who want to do the work, where is the money? And so
you don't have the money to push the consultations?
No, we do not. We raise everything we spend. So basically, we are a service delivery organization running as a business, and sometimes it's tricky because if we have our own way, a lot of things should be given to certain companies basically as free, just to bring them up. I don't believe in free things. But how do you lift up the small person whose whole budget is 2,000 cedis? And these are national conversations that we've been having and will continue to have. But somehow, we need to fund our standards infrastructure. And there are examples in history. Look at Germany. There was a time in the early 1900s when the UK would say, well, goods from Germany were not good. They invested into a quality infrastructure. 20 years ago, we really wouldn't buy things from India. They invested in the quality infrastructure. I won't say even, you buy things from China, in the UK, in the US, and you know that because those countries have invested in the good quality infrastructure, the goods are of good quality. So you can get goods from any country, but it's up to your national authorities having the infrastructure to assess their suitability for use in your domain and ensuring that they are available to your people. It's fair to say that the investments needed to provide our services and the investments you raise from IGF probably is about 10% of what is needed. In other ways, the investments we are making for our quality infrastructure is less than 10% of what is required. And if we are going to trade under an African continental free trade area, which requires that our people go to the market with quality as their hallmark, and we have a lot of products. Our plantain chips are the best in the world. We have standards for them. But if our companies cannot pay, and if we cannot provide the services, because unfortunately testing costs money. So we need a national dialogue, a national conversation on how do you fund this? And you need to put massive funds so that industry can also experiment. You may want to spice your plantain chips with some pepper or extra. How do you measure it and how do you add to it? And I am convinced, in fact, I'm fully persuaded that with an accessible and affordable testing, measurement, etc. regime, Ghanaian companies can double our GDP just by their trade, because most of our businesses are small and medium scale. The ideas are there. Look at the cosmetic products. But to elevate them, you need to do certain tests. They are freaking expensive. They are expensive. Somebody's got to pay for them. And we shouldn't shy away from these discussions. I know people say I'm quite outspoken. But the reality is that there's only one way of achieving exports. That is having good quality products which meet international standards. And standards are a language for trade. They don't need the language as in the spoken language. People check the specifications. And you cannot fake it. If it's iPhone 12, you know it. It will take a picture and you love it. If you pretend, unfortunately, the market will also pretend. And they will not buy your products. So it's about time to realize that we have the products, we have the entrepreneurs, we can beat the world. But to do that, we go with quality, quality, and quality.
I like that. And, talking about funding, the CEO of the Ghana Association of Bankers is here. He's talked about, their preparedness as a demand and supply thing. John, are these some of the things you may consider when you have discussions with the banks?
Yeah, it's an overall picture, and the picture that he's painted is actually can relate very well with that message because I'm also coming from that environment where I was on the other side, dealing with the businesses directly, and I have a personal experience with a company we were ready to give, significant amount of funding to, and just seeking and obtaining EPA approval and report took that company 6 months to get EPA. If that company were to go into a business that is competing with somebody, a counterpart in Nigeria or in Kenya or in Egypt or wherever on the African continent, the market will not wait for you for 6 months. So it is a very big problem. And if as a country, we've taken this AfCFTA thing very seriously, and we have the secretariat here, we have a national coordinating office, we have GEPA, we have Ghana Exim. We need a national infrastructure. And I'm very, it's very sorry to note that an institution such as the Ghana Standards Authority is underfunded significantly when they must be at the forefront of the success or otherwise of AfCFTA. Then we have not started. Then we don't have to talk about funding the business, because if we fund even the institution to test whether that product meets international standard is incapacitated and is unable to deliver, which may delay the customer, which when the customer is delayed may have an impact on the customer's ability to also service the facility. And over time, we'll just be talking about the problems we've had, bad assets sitting on the bank's books. No bank wants to give money with a high degree of or possibility of a missed payment. So these basic facts on the ground should be a national agenda. I think that it should be somebody's job to ensure that FDA, Ghana Standards Authority, all the state actors that must come together to ensure that the infrastructure as the baseline for the country to take advantage of that what we see on paper as AfCFTA is realized. Otherwise, we will just be talking like we have been doing for many, many years, and people will take advantage of our market. The danger of AfCFTA is the opportunities abound, and so are the risks. It does not really matter whether you are exporting to the next country. Once you are a signatory to AfCFTA, that country have the ability to export to you. And once they are meeting your standards, it will come to your country. So it is your ability to prepare and get your products out there that gives you that advantage we've been preaching about. But it appears as a country, all the discussions that I have been part of or privy to fora such as this, the focus has been, unfortunately, been only on the positives and, let's go and take advantage. And I'm not sure we are critically analyzing and assessing the potential impact if we do not respond adequately, properly, and well prepared as a country in our response to the AfCFTA rollout.
Okay, so
to the question, it's not a bank issue. This issue that he raised is not a bank issue. I think it's a national issue, and we must, if we don't see the problem from the right angle, you may proffer a suboptimal solution. If the moment you make it a bank problem, we will not fix it, because we will not get to the discussion or the problems that he's raised.
So, Dr. Joseph Abeng, I see you nodding. You've been nodding, and you are the president of the Ghanaian Union of Traders Association. Now, many of your members would want to take advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. Unfortunately, we're told standardization has become a problem because in some instances, you don't even have the funds to see it through. How do you intend to resolve this? If you can turn your microphone on.
Thank you very much. We have been trading with the rest of the world. We are traders. This is what we do. And when it comes to standards, we have been providing what it is required of us. And Africa, trading within Africa is not going to bring any difference. Ghana Standard Authority is still going to be on us. So we do not see any difference in here. If I can go ahead and explain certain things. I think the Continental Free Trade Area means a lot for us. For us, we think it's a great opportunity to better our lot, especially when we are going to do so when we are not going to pay tariffs. And so, if you have this opportunity, business thrives on numbers. And in this case, we are going to trade under an environment of about 1.2 billion people with a total GDP of about 3.4 trillion, which is very exciting. Proximity too is very important for our businesses. For us, we even wanted to do two-way business, that we send goods, that's exporting goods, and then using the proceeds thereof to also bring goods. So this AfCFTA is very important for us to even shore up our gains as compared to what we were previously doing. And I want to say that we have a lot that we are contending with, and I want to explain on behalf of the trading community. We have been saying that we do intra-trade of only 15% in Africa. It is true, and justifiable so. It is because the people of Africa do not consume raw materials. We consume finished products. And I dare to say that our import requirement is about 30% that we can outsource from Africa. And we have to be truthful to this fact. And so if we are doing intra-trade of 15%, it does not mean that we have not even tried to source out this product from Africa, but the non-availability of this product. Okay. Let me finish. And
sure, go ahead.
Yeah. We lack, we also have to contend, and even before then, I have to let you know that the Continental Free Trade Area is not going to be a standalone. We are still going to trade with other countries, and that even now, as of now, we have to contend ourselves with the complexities of the rules of origin, the permissible goods as against the non-permissible goods are even not known to us as of now. We lack a lot more information, as we know other terrains in Asia, Europe, and elsewhere, even more than Africa. How are we going to address this for us to know what we are actually trading with? So the advantages that we have always been talking about, I like how the banker said that we have always been propagating the positive side without looking the negatives. It is very true, because we are businessmen. We are not going to be that we are advocates of African unity or African this thing. What we want to better our lot. We want to maximize our profit. And so we are going to compare these advantages. The advantage in pricing and quality, our land very soon. We have our suppliers credit that we have. We enjoy a lot of suppliers credit from our mainstream suppliers now, who give us about 180 days to adjust and pay and all that? Are we going to get it when we do this intra-trade and all that? That's a question to answer, because other countries have done very juicy packages in the forms of Exim Bank arrangement credit for countries to come and patronize their goods if you are buying from those terrain. So we have all these packages lined out for us, and then the tariff-free that we are supposed to get, even as a whole, is being staggered over the years. Now, people have started comparing the advantages, and they say, oh, then it's not even attractive, because now the first year, a negligible reduction of the duty will be affected, because it's not a whole sum something. And so we have a lot to contend with. Otherwise, trading among ourselves as a continent is a very beautiful idea.
So you know, talking about trading amongst yourself being a very beautiful idea. Now, you are one man who's always been, if I could put it, on the street, fighting foreigners trading in this country. You're one man who consistently fights for protectionism. And we know the outcome in this country. Realistically, you've talked about, you say, okay, so we're talking about all the good things, But listening to you now, you're also talking about the good things that would come out from it. You have not considered, for instance, protectionism in other jurisdictions, the support that the country will be giving to them, and whether you can compete, as we have seen in this country already. And you have been going around calling for the closure of shops. Realistically, do you think you're prepared based on what you've seen in the past and based on what other countries do for their businesses?
Yeah. Thank you very much for this question, because I knew this was going to come.
But you didn't say it.
Because I knew you asked specifically, so I had to wait. And it is true, but that's the most important aspect of the whole thing, and that we should respect the rules and engagement that we set for ourselves. Before the Continental Free Trade Area, we had the regional blocks, and I believe we have to look at the loopholes, the gray areas, why these regional blocks failed.
And what are those gray areas you want us to look at?
And it's because of the abuse of the protocols. Is that because non-compliance of the rules and engagement itself. And so we have had a good framework. Our country have ratified. Even before being ratified, our trade minister have called us, explained all these rules and engagement to us. And we said that this is perfect. And it is because we understand that we have to abide by these rules. So non-compliance of these rules is what bring about some of these infractions that we had with this, because they did not comply with the ECOWAS rules of origin. They don't have to come here and sell anything that is imported. That's not what the protocol say. And so if this thing will be successful, we have to look at the gray areas, the problems that we encountered in the regional blocks, and then fashion it into a workable this. And I believe if you abide by these rules of engagement and respect it, we wouldn't encounter what your fears are.
Can you compete?
Definitely. Competition is under fairness. If there's no fairness, one cannot compete. And in this regard, fairness is not even related to the fact that somebody is coming from this country to come and trade with. But we're talking about standards. Where you are complying with a good standard, because even for the mere fact that you are Ghanaian, you don't feel comfortable selling unwholesome products to your customers. Somebody will come from somewhere and sell all manner of things. There's no fairness here. So if there's fairness and parity in forms of standardization and all that, then we are all at the same scale and nobody can edge you out. And then also what we will do as a country ourselves, how are we not going to compete if we do not create the enabling environment itself? Cost of borrowing. If now we started talking about cost of borrowing because we have seen that that has been the problem. Why we are fighting the Chinese, the Nigerians, and the Turkish, and all that who have come into the retail space. Because whilst they are sourcing their credit for 3% and 5%, we are sourcing ours at 20%, 23%, and in some cases 25%. Already the person have urged you out. So then you become timid. Then you do what necessarily you shouldn't have done. But then if you have to think about these things and then position us in a manner that we will become at par with our other member states and all that, we are not going to be afraid. Now, a cost of doing business, if you talk about Gapoha trying to increase new tariffs, shipping lines trying to give it to us, we haven't streamlined these activities and all that. If care is not taken, this is not the time when we are entering into continental free trade for these bills to be lumped up again, and then we will be opt out of the competition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Abing. I am tempted to go to Samson Asaki, who's the Executive Secretary of the Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana, but I'll get to you shortly. Let me get to Francis Holy of Kasaprakun so we can understand how they've been able to do it, because it's one of the Ghanaian companies that is out there on the African continent, and they're doing it very well. Francis, how have you done it? Yes, if we could turn it on, yes.
Thank you, and good afternoon to all of us, and good afternoon to our listeners. I may say, okay, we took advantage of the AfCFTA free trade agreement when it was first introduced. And then I may say that in terms of quality, as Prof said, we were ready, and then they, as the referee to the quality of our product or standards to our product specification that we send to the market, I think we were ready by then to go to the market in terms of infrastructure, investment, product, physical look. I mean, that is going to compete to the product that are on the market there. Yes, when it started, we had a smooth process here in Ghana where the agencies, the approving agencies that were supposed to come vet the products from the beginning to the exit point, which he said were being put under one umbrella to shorten the bureaucratic processes that we've been having. Yes, it's been done, and I think it's been bettered now. But the only challenge, my only problem that I am having is that prior to the introduction of the free trade agreement, countries have ratified to the program. But we were not successful at the other end of the process, whereby we got to South Africa, we were hit by the lockdown issue. We were not able to have access to actually clear the product on time because the systems were locked up. People were not physically in the offices. So after some few days, we were able to have access into the system. Custom has processed, and then we got to internal revenue, where their system is just like Ghana GRA and internal revenue batch up together. So the issue is they have ratified, but the rules or the policies to let or to waive the product, the quota free, was not in existence, because they were saying that yes, they have ratified, but these staff were not gazetted into their system, and authorities would have implemented the necessary online approvals, whereby when we have products that were approved under the certificate of origin of AfCFTA, we'll get the waiver. And so from January, our product was there, to February. Now we'll have to go do the manual clearing, pay the rare duty, and get the product out of the port, because we accumulating demurrages. You understand? So my problem is, yes, it is a beautiful idea. People come here, yes, there's opportunity, and what's the basic thing that we're supposed to do? We have to hold the countries or members who have signed to this treaty to abide by the rules and regulations. Other than that, we're going to play like ETLS, where I'm even shipping from here to Togo. Togo is not even ratifying the certificate of origin under the ECOWAS system. It is becoming, if we don't take time, it will become same. And we will be speaking the grammar, as my friend said, and then at the end of the day, we will end up shouting, nobody is minding us. I came back with a complaint that, yes, this is what is happening. So what is the next step that we're supposed to do? Everything was at a standstill. But at the beginning, everybody was involved. Yes, it's going to be it's going to be easy. Yes, we got the easy aspect from our end. What about the other end? So if you don't have the capacity to send and go clear the product there, you at the end of the day will run away from your products, because you cannot pay for the demurrage, let alone paying for the duty on time. You understand? So I have a big problem there. It's a big problem that the policymakers will have to sit up, bring the parties to the book that, yes, we were fortunate to be the first players under the trade agreement, but we're hicked up. And I was so disappointed that if we were supposed to go and make the news for people to follow, and then we are hit by this, I'm sorry. It didn't work out. And come back to our home, Ghana, and then we trying to take advantage of the opportunity that this thing presents. It means, right from Prof and then the second speaker, we will have to be ready mentally, physically, financially. We will have to, the government will have to come in to support players. If the 1DF is really looked up, it's supposed to be a vessel that is going to what? Support smaller industries to come together, to be resourced, to be able to do the fight. But on their own, I bet you, we are already losing the battle. You understand? And for me, it's also a time where people will have to shun away from their working or trying to compete in silos. That if I am doing plantain chips, Naliban is doing plantain chips, and we can put resources together, to see the government interventions, and then grow our portfolio, be attracted to the bank to have a solid source of funding, then we get the regulators, the standard authority, to what? To give us the necessary standard limit for our product that we want to put into the market. Already 60% we are there. Then we now fall back on the process to have the required document to ship our produce to compete in the market. But if these things are not done, if we are supposed to go to Burkina Faso and be buying tomatoes to be bringing here, and we sit down waiting to farm on seasons, man, come on, we are losing the game. This is the time we will have to look at proper irrigation systems backed by proper finances with standards before we can be able to say that we are going into a proper competition. Other than that, it's a fiasco for us to sit down and be talking about the opportunities. It's just being on the drawing board, on the books, on our lips that we're speaking. But if the real thing is not done, if government does not come to the aid of the players, the industries, and people within the industries also will have to leave their old mentalities of working, we cannot compete. People will have to merge. We have to merge. Yeah.
Let's chip in this briefly, because we know that our sister country within West Africa, Nigeria, also at a point close to your borders, and they're one of your main markets on the African continent. How did you cope with that?
Yes, I mean, when Nigeria closed the borders, we were all surprised because even at that time, the processes had started. But, I mean, they closed it, everybody spoke, they didn't mind anybody, so we're hit back by a lot of losses because, yes, we had track who were...
Do you know the quantum of losses you incurred?
We lost a lot of millions of dollars. So I cannot give you the specifics, but it was just unfortunate for trucks to be even at the no man's land, and then the border was being closed. So those trucks were there for, I think, a year before we have to repatriate them back to Ghana to try to put the waste into containers to ship to Nigeria. You understand? So yes, it really hits us. We lost a lot of money in terms of speed to the market. We were losing. Competition hits
similar
us.
Things may happen under the African Continental Free Trade Area.
Yes, I believe so if care is not taken. Because for me, the first instant is going to South Africa, and this thing, we're not ready into the system whereby we could easily go out and then have our words cleared on time. But now we paid for demurrage, we're going to do the right duty, and believe me, you know what it takes to pay duty for alcoholic products in South Africa. If you don't match their standards, they'll take you out. They will confiscate the product, and that's the end of it. So if care is not taken, we will be at the back.
Okay. Yeah. Let me hear from you briefly, Samson, because you are with the importers and exporters. What have your exporters been telling you when it comes to their dealings with AfCFTA since it started? Samson, can you hold on for me? I'll get back to you. I think we'd have to work on your microphone. I'll get back to you. So let me say that we've been joined by Seth Akwabwa, who is the president of the Association of Ghana Industries. But let me get to Louise Afful, who is the executive director of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Policy Network. And for you, I want us to look at research. And I want you to share with us, for instance, the channels and opportunities that are available from the government, civil society, and from the private sector to drive data-driven business decision-making under AfCFTA.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that's a pleasure. Where I find myself, I'm positioned in a way that already the difficulties and challenges have started coming before I even start talking about opportunities. But to your question, I must be proud or happy to say that I joined the consultancy during the draft process, all the way before it was adopted. So at least I have a little understanding of at least foreseeing some of the challenges all the way from Seychelles when we were meeting to look at some of these policies. One, let me clarify one or two things. I don't know whether the mic is okay. The difficulties that we are going to have with, when I listen to Francis and then their great brother, is that countries that have not become full members, we are going to have problem with them. Because the Continental Free Trade Agreement, you have to be a full-party state. That is three-state process. You have to sign, ratify, and deposit your instrument. Some countries have not deposited They are instrument of ratification. They are not members. They cannot benefit from the free trade agreement. And so dealing with such a country is a problem. That is first. Secondly, one of the things that we also have to look at is that it is all about African products. This is why we said we wanted to agree on this. The difficulty is that right from the AU level, from the heads of states, there are a lot of things that they are supposed, based on research, they are supposed to equip the secretariat to function properly. That is not done. Because as it stands now, even staffing is a problem. The secretariat is supposed to be autonomous, but it's still coming under regulations because the budget is sitting in AU. So they cannot function because some of these problems that are coming, they are supposed to solve it. They are supposed to come back to it, the feedback. Again, there is an issue pending whereby before the ratification and the signing of the agreement, some of these countries have not yet changed some of their custom procedures and laws. But after the ratification and then the signing, you go to their countries at the custom and say, oh, we have changed this. It's no more in existence. We don't accept this. We don't accept that. But before then, it was not at the time of signing. This is a big problem too. Another thing, based on research that is also coming, is that there should be liberalization of the institutions under AfTA. Not only product and goods and services. Institutions, I'm happy Professor Dodo is here, is that whatever that you see happening at the border of Ghana, when you go to Togo, the same must be applicable. Whatever is happening under immigrations in Ghana, when you go to Togo, that is the problem happening. You go to a country, say, I'm not aware. You go to another country, say, I'm not aware. Because they have not yet harmonized the systems. And that is where they are heading towards now. Again, we have been looking at the product side of issues. We also have to look at the other protocols, where trade in services, which is huge. I was going to mention when the president of the Bank Association said they are creating desks within their banks. I was going to tell him that it is not about creating desks within the financial sectors, because you yourself, the banks, you are part of it. Under trading services, we have financial services, including banks. So you are part of the whole show. You don't even need to create desks. You are supposed to participate fully. But the house, and we're coming to those. For me, so if you ask me, so far, between now and July, about 41 countries have pledged to be full states by July. Again, the challenges that we're also having is that the group of 6, these are countries that have the highest budget when it comes to AfTA. And most of them belong to the Arab Maghreb, AMU. And most of them have ratified, but they're not full members. Even if you take Algeria and Morocco, for about several years, they have not opened their borders. Yet these two are within the group of 6 who finance the AU itself, including AfTA. So, Winston, to start with, the challenges are coming across because the members themselves, what they themselves have signed and ratified, they are not committed to it. Finally, if you look at in terms of the rules of origin that Dr. Bain talked about, the rules of origin has reached a stage of about 81%. Now, the last about 19 or so that is left is the most crucial part of it. That's the value additions. Because if you are talking about wholly produced or partially produced and the value additions, to how extent was the thing valued added here? And yet that one has not yet been negotiated fully. And that is very difficult, because then if somebody is importing all the way from outside Africa and comes and tell you that, look, this is what I've added to it, and therefore this is the price I'm going to give, how do you determine? And so these are some of the things that I think that it's been a little bit headache, if I should say, from the point of the Secretary General, is not having it easy at all. But I think that finally, it was also envisaged during the draft process that this is the best time that private sector within every member state should be harmonized, come under one body, and work seriously under the ministries of trade. I have seen that most of the ministries of trade in all member states have shirked their responsibility. That shouldn't be so, because they are the supervising agencies. They are the ones who advise the Secretariat and approve the structure of the Secretariat. And so ministries of trade must harmonize private sector institutions so strongly that they can have a say at every stage. And finally, after every 5 years, the agreement says if you want to withdraw, you can withdraw. There is a clause. After every 5 years, if you are not interested as a country, as a member, you have the right to withdraw. But I hope we are not there yet. Please, I said finally, but finally, under the dispute settlement, which is another protocol of the Continental Free Trade, and that is why I foresee the problems like the Nigerian situations we had. Under the agreement, we have been looking at dispute settlement between member country and another member country. But we have forgotten dispute settlement between two private sector entities within the country under AfCFTA regime. We have to look at that. Maybe company A, company C, they are in the same country, but they're operating under AfCFTA regime. How do we start dispute settlement even among them? So far, I'll say that it has been good, but they are foreseeing the problems gradually, and I believe that come July, things will shape up.
Okay, so let me say that we've also been joined by Seth Akwawa, who is president of the Association of Ghana Industries. And I'd like to find out from you. So we had the story of Francis Casapreco. They went to South Africa. One or two issues here and there. Are you aware if any of your members has been able to work this out successfully? Do you have statistics you can share with us recently?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm not the president of AG, I'm the CEO.
CEO, sorry about that.
So thank you. The question of, I know that our companies are making efforts. Some have successfully done it. Casapreco is a typical example. Subsequently, a few are making attempts. But let's also bear in mind that some were already exporting to West Africa and other countries. And West Africa, we had the ETLS already in operation. We have quite a number of companies already exporting. And I don't think the situation has changed much. We don't have statistics of new companies that were not exporting before and then are now exporting after the start of the AfCFTA. So that is something we need to monitor. But I must say that there are some that are already doing exports, and the information we have is that the protocols are being observed, but there are challenges along the line, as has been enumerated by Francis from Casapreco. So there are challenges along the line, but there are a few that are already doing it.
Great, but finally from you, what do you think are some of the opportunities and challenges that your members are likely to face as a result of AfCFTA?
Well, as for the opportunities, I think we've always been talking about it. The fact that you have a bigger market, it's an opportunity by itself. It helps you to also attract big investment. But it all depends on how your business environment is, because if companies are going to be investing in your country, they take so many factors into account. And now that you have a bigger market, if they invest here, it means they have access to a bigger market to do business. So that is a big opportunity. The other aspect is that I think Ghana, if you rank it, we are not among the bottom in terms of industrial development within Africa. There are others that are also above us. So we are somewhere in the middle. So if we strategize well, we should be able to capture a good share of the market because we already have some good industrial concerns. However, it all depends on how we are able to strategize well. I think we've had a lot of ideas, but we've been quite slow in the strategy. As at now, I don't think we still have a clear country strategy that is a blueprint that we are following, even though we are aware that Ministry of Trade has done quite a lot by setting up technical committees. We were part of most of those committees. We are churning out ideas and all that. But by now, we should be clear with our country strategy. And there's no such strategy that exists that we are following on a regular basis. I think AfCFTA itself has not fully, even though we've started, there are still a number of areas that have not been fully and properly developed to be properly integrated into the system. Disputes, resolution mechanisms, I'm not sure it's fully completed. Payment systems and mechanisms are still in the hanging, they are still developing it. So there are still a lot of things hanging around. But I must admit that for a typical process like this, you need to start from somewhere. If you want to wait to finish everything, then you will never start. So it's good that we've started, but we need to quicken the pace in terms of our strategy and our development. I heard Francis talking a lot about standards, and I think that I believe strongly that we need to be very careful about standards and how we develop a strategy around it. The reason is that by the AfCFTA, you are allowed for the goods that are part of the ones that you can export freely, duty-free, quota-free, about 90%, you are secured. You can go. But the problem is that if country has a standard and the standards are not harmonized, they can use standard as the basis to block your goods from coming into their country. If they say you are not meeting our standards, you're coming from Africa, all right, you may have registered, you have gone through all the process, so by the regulation, you are actually allowed to bring your goods duty-free, quota-free into their country. What if you are not meeting their standards? And what standards are we following? So standard development and implementation is key. I'm aware that Prof. Dodo is very key on the standard development within Africa. But until we have a harmonized system, which indicates or determines the standard that the whole Africa should use, every country has its own standards, and they can use standards to block it. So Ghana as a country, we must be mindful of this, that when you are producing, bear in mind that you have a certain standard to meet. And it's not just meeting the standard, it's also the recognition of the standard. Who is recognizing your standard? Which organization is behind it? If that organization issues you that standard certificate, is it going to be recognized in another country? These are pertinent issues we need to observe. Okay. And therefore, we should be very careful that when goods are going in, we shouldn't just say because we have a market, we are exporting. Let's be sure that Ghana Standards Authority, at the moment, that's the only authority we have in certifying our standards. Are you sure that we've gone through the process with Ghana Standards Authority so that when it comes to defense, they can come and defend you and say, yes, this is a made in Ghana product, it's meeting, at the very least, the Ghana standard. So we must be able to fight it at that end. So these are all issues that have to be looked at.
Okay. Thank you very much, Seth. And let me get to you, Kwabena Ofe of the Pharmaceutical Society of Ghana, because one area of concern has to do with the intellectual property regulation within the African Continental Free Trade Area. And we do know that there are some Ghanaian industries, such as those found within the pharmaceutical sector, that are innovating drugs but are usually unable to harness the benefits due to challenges with registering patents and trademarks across borders. Now, what systems are available to recognize and maintain the intellectual property rights for Ghanaian products?
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to everybody. Good evening to your listeners. So I'll come to your question. Let me just give some background to that first. So I want to share thoughts on generally what we think about AfCFTA and its impact on the pharmaceutical businesses. We think that pharmaceutical industry in Ghana has received some of the best intentions for support as far as industries are concerned. At the continental level, there is the Pharmaceutical Manufacturing Plan for Africa, which has been approved by the AU itself. And Ghana has been at the forefront of that. In fact, an AU delegation has visited Ghana to assess our system, see how they can support. And as far as I'm concerned, it's only Ghana that had that kind of visits. At the regional level in ECOWAS, we have the ECOWAS Regional Pharmaceutical Plan, which is also centered around local production of pharmaceutical products and has some kind of support from the political authority in West Africa. In Ghana, we have the Ghana Pharmaceutical Strategy, which is being spearheaded by the Ministry of Trade itself. And out of that, some kind of financing has been made available to some of the industries we have here. In terms of regulation, the pharmaceutical business is regulation intensive. It is, some professor told me one time that there are 3 heavily regulated industries in the world: the nuclear industry, the airline industry, and then the third is the pharmaceutical industry. And so without a strong regulatory environment, whatever you do in your country with pharmaceuticals will not go anywhere. And fortunately, from, if you can hear what Professor Dodo said, the Standards Authority and then the Food and Drugs Authority in particular have been really stringent in guiding the industry to a certain level. And so because of the nature of the regulatory capacity of our Food and Drugs Authority, there is a certain good reputation that pharmaceutical products produced in Ghana have in Ghana and then outside Ghana as well. And so for me, the AfCFTA provides yet another opportunity for the pharmaceutical industry in Ghana to be able to properly launch itself. We have a vision to be the hub for pharmaceutical production in West Africa by, well, at first we said 2025. I think that maybe we must push it a bit further. But for that vision is, in my view, it is possible for a number of reasons. Number one, I've talked about the regulatory capacity. In West Africa, for example, we have about, let's say, 200 pharmaceutical manufacturing companies. About 150 of them are in Nigeria alone. And then the rest, Ghana has about between 30 to 35, and the rest are in other countries. So because of our regulator and how far we have come, though Nigerians have a lot, per capita we have a lot more, and we have better quality. So it positions us in a more favorable way to take advantage of an external market. But the question is the external market really realistic for the industry, right? Well, so far, it doesn't look like it has been realistic. And hopefully, as we continue to see the implementation of AfCFTA, it should be realistic for us. Most of the industries are producing under capacity. If you take infusions, for example, drips, let me put it that way, that's a common name that we know. There are about 4 industries in Ghana that produce infusions, and all of them are producing under 50% capacity. And they have the capacity to even produce enough for the entire West Africa region when the appropriate framework is there. So I think that the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry in Ghana is really, and let me be selfish here, one of the few industries that can actually be the flag bearer of industrialization external of Africa, right? And I think that we should be deliberate about pushing it into that sector. Today, most of the manufacturing facilities are establishing new facilities that are what we call compliance with current good manufacturing practices. It means that those facilities here can compare to any of advanced facilities anywhere else, right? Again, because of the regulator. But that investment also means that the products that are coming out of the facility are not going to be at the same cost as facilities that don't meet that current good manufacturing practices. So if your paracetamol that was coming out initially before now was maybe one strip was maybe 10 pesos, with that level of investment to establish that kind of facility, you can't have that same paracetamol coming out 10 pesos if the market is just Ghana. Right, so the advantage there to make medicines of high quality but also accessible and affordable is in the fact that the market can be bigger than just what is in Ghana. In Africa, we have a well-organized pharmaceutical industry, for example, in the northern parts of Africa, and then in South Africa. So in Eastern Africa and Western Africa and most parts of Central Africa, the market is there for the industry to take. But then there's need for that, political guidance and bulldozing to take the industry from here to assist them to be able to access those markets from a public health point of view. Okay. Let me also take this opportunity to also add that the establishment of the African Medicines Agency for the purposes of pharmaceutical manufacturing is extremely important, because that agency then kind of provides an overarching regulatory authority that is able to harmonize, like simple we're talking about, regulations that govern the industry, so that if I have a product in Ghana and I want to register it in Togo, it is the same set of documentation and requirements that I take there as I'll take to Botswana or some other place. And then with respect to some products that are of public health importance, once I can get that product approved by that overarching continental authority, I don't have to go through to every country to go and present a set of documents to them to evaluate the product before I can have access to it. So for the pharma industry, the regulatory regime, a harmonized regulatory regime, is critical to accessing, the AfCFTA as a whole. Now back to your question on intellectual property. So I want to answer that in two steps. So the first step is that at the level of our industrialization, so what we are doing now is that most of the products that we are producing are generics of products that are whose IPs have expired at the level that we are. So we do not at this moment encounter significant challenges as far as intellectual property is concerned, right? Either the respect of it, the registration of it, and things like that. So it is not, as of now, a major challenge as far as going into the market is concerned for us. Now, to answer the question broadly about whether we have authorities that have regard for intellectual property with respect to pharmaceutical products, largely I would say yes. So we have, for example, the research-based pharma companies that go through the R&D and produce medicines and all that and have them registered. Mostly, even until recently, regulatory authorities like the FDAs and all that will not allow you to register a product if it is protected by intellectual property and you are not the owner of that property, until it has now become, the issue is now that, well, it's not a quality issue, it's more of a trade issue, and so the FDA should not be interfering in intellectual property issues. But largely, I think that the regulatory system significantly respects intellectual property where there is need, and we haven't had a significant challenge as far as that is concerned.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kwabena. Very great thoughts there. And at this point, we would invite questions from all of you here. And we have some persons joining us on Zoom as well. And many of you have sent your questions to us. I just would ask a few of those questions. And I'll get to you, Samson, don't worry. So there's this question, which would have to go to you, Professor Alex Dodu, and it says, do we know at what stage our neighboring countries are with respect to standards, strategic value chain investment? How are we positioning ourselves strategically based on this knowledge?
Our neighboring states, I think the closest, or rather the ones where we benchmark against, will be the Standards Organization of Nigeria. Indeed, Ghana, that's the GSA, on behalf of Ghana, has a mutual recognition agreement with SON of Nigeria. This has been in place for years, but its implementation, once again, has been more on paper than in actuality. But how are we preparing ourselves? I had a question about African standards, and I'm happy to say that the African Standards Organization has harmonized most African standards in line with International Standards Organization standards, because we are trading with the world. Even though we are looking at Africa, we start with ISO and then we go to African standards before we look at national standards. How are we preparing ourselves? As I stated earlier, we have prepared standards for most of our products. We are hoping to have EcoMark Africa certification, which is accepted across Africa. It may interest listeners and viewers to know that as we speak, Morocco is working with us so that we can offer halal certification for food products, because there are a lot of products which you can export to the Muslim countries, especially if it's halal, and that would attract more premium. And just last week, our ambassador in Israel got us involved on the possibility of also offering kosher certification.
Okay.
So we are producing the standards needed to trade in the United Africa.
Another question for you, and I'm sure Kwabena would address this also, says the Africa Continental Free Trade Area primarily means a bigger market for Ghanaian businesses. How should the pharmaceutical industry in Ghana and the regulatory authorities position themselves to ensure that Ghana becomes a leading name in the production and exportation of quality pharmaceutical products in Africa? And it's from Abdel Issa, who is joined us virtually. Professor Dodu, briefly before I get to Kwabena.
I think in terms of the regulators, the Food and Drugs Authority does that, and I'm happy to say that over the years, maybe about 20 years now, the initiatives on harmonization are more or less, they've joined. So across WAHO or West Africa, you would see that the processes are harmonized. And once again, I'll join Kwabena in saying that I'm proud to say that our regulator has been assessed as being one of the most competent on the continent. So in terms of regulation from the Food and Drugs Authority side, we are extremely good to go.
Yes, Kwabena.
Well, so like I said in my earlier presentation, there are the new wave of industries that we are seeing in the country are aspiring to be world class. What is left now is the opportunity to actually take advantage of being in other countries. I think that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Trade, together with the industry, perhaps should sit and then figure out, identify, for example, we have the capacity to produce 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 products. And we are going to concentrate on these products as far as our export strategy is concerned. And we are going to find out or provide the necessary support that we need. Realistic, not we will support you, but the real support that will make the difference, so that when you talk about those 5 products, at least we know that as far as Ghana is concerned, wherever I go in ECOWAS or in Central Africa or whatever it is, these 5 products have taken over the market. And at least from an industrial development point of view and trade point of view, that would be a huge advantage. And then maybe later on, because the pharmaceutical industry, and we are not just thinking about developing industry, but also improving access to healthcare, then we can also focus on some things that are of public health importance, and then also begin to drive that across these. So I think that we should focus and be specific as to what we are going to take into that market, and then support the industry to get there.
Great. Do we have any questions? Yes, so get the microphone to you. Okay, I think you have one in front of you. Please go ahead. Just identify yourself and then you get to ask your question. Yes. Okay, let's get the microphone to him. So,
hello. Thank you very much for the opportunity to bring this question for discussion. My name is Professor Thompson, and if you look at the discussion as we had up to now, there's one thing which runs true, that is, we need skills and competences to be able to achieve all that we've discussed. Now, how do we get these skills and competences manifested? One of the basic ways we can do that is to get apprenticeship. Now, normally when people hear apprenticeship, the first thing is to think about TVET. But a doctor needs apprenticeship. IT professional needs apprenticeship. A telecommunication professional needs also apprenticeship. A lawyer needs apprenticeship. An engineer needs apprenticeship. Not only the fitter, but also the engineer. So the issue is we need to come home to implement something which will give us the ability to be able to take advantage of all that we're talking about, the threats and everything. Now, fortunately, we are doing this thing with Germany. Germany is one of the countries which has really championed the concept of apprenticeship, which is normally in German we call the dual Ausbildung. We have 2 things coming on. You get your academic qualification, and you also have your a certificate showing that you have gone through that kind of apprenticeship. That has not only been, it has been in Switzerland, it has been in Austria. Now the UK has taken over, and the US has also taken over. Now, I'm very happy we are doing that with Germany. So what I am trying to emphasize, that for us to be able to take advantage of all these that we need, what we want to achieve, we need to have this apprenticeship in a new concept, as I have mentioned, and being done in these countries. So the question is, what is the national effort to be able to champion such a procedure for us to be able to get the necessary skills and the competences to be a decisive player in the African free trade area.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. Interesting comments there. Yes, you want to chip in something, Luis?
Yes. Thank you. First of all, let me say that under the Continental Free Trade Agreement, the Protocol on Trading Services captures education. And one of the things that we have been championing is to export skills. And it's one of the areas that countries can benefit under this trade. Why? If you are graduating in banking and finance, and you feel the region you find yourself, you're not getting a job, you have to identify a country, let's say like Mauritius, that is about 85% in financial services. Good. The protocol has inbuilt under the Abuja Treaty free movement of people. That clause must be respected. So you don't have to be in Ghana alone. And that's one of the opportunities that this agreement brings. I was going to say that a time will come, the agreement is taking us to what we call barter trade. That is where we are heading to, whereby if Nigeria or in Ghana have about a lot of doctors, they will say, let us supply Nigeria with doctors in exchange of another fraternity of skills. If the same applies to the goods. A time will come, Ghana have a lot of salt. We are giving the salt to our nearby country for in exchange of something. That is one opportunity that the Continental Free Trade is also championing. So both skills exchange and then goods exchange in terms of barter is happening.
Okay.
Can I please have a follow-up question, please?
Sure, make it brief for us so we can get others to.
Yes. I'm happy you said it is based or it is encapsulated in education. Now, don't you think it's good to be in education, but it must be specific so that the concept of apprenticeship is not lost to education. Now, education has been on for a very long time. You and I, we enjoyed it. But the apprenticeship aspect has not been very much emphasized. We think only about apprenticeship, like I said, in terms of TVET. But that's not actually what we need to be able to take advantage of the after that we want to have. So my question is, how is this encapsulation of apprenticeship in education being pushed forward to give us the necessary advantage that we want?
And you answer that in a minute. I need to get to Samson and get to other persons. We have a few minutes to go.
Yeah, I think this question, though, to go to the education ministry, but I think that basically all that needs to be done is that countries and that trading services, they must strategize how they can go about how they sell out their educational product. That is what I can say for now.
Great. Samson, yes.
Well, thank you very much. I wanted to recommend that in the near future, if IMANI-GIZ is organizing a program of such, we should invite the custom division to come and sit and listen and see what have been the frustrations our brothers from the Casapreco went through when their product got to South Africa. And indeed, this tells us clearly, from where I sit as an advocate, that if Casapreco were not to be financially sound, I remember a month ago or so, if Mr. Robin can bear with me, we were invited to the AfTA Secretariat, where His Excellency the President came to address us, and the Ministry of, and then hand over the authority to Ghana Custom. And since then, Ghana Custom also launched some of the issues, the nitty-gritty things that they will need, or as an exporter who want to export to any of the African Continental Free Trade areas in any of the African countries, you will have to go through. And Ghana Custom is ready, government of Ghana is poised, and Minister of Trade is up and doing. So they showed your first day export, and they showed another sister company. But we did not come back to tell us
the untold story, which you've just told us today. That has been the challenge. It means that if it were to be an SME, his or her goods could have remained locked up there, probably got rotten if it is supposed to be, if it were to be perishable goods, and that was going to be a cost to the importer and a cost to the country where you were sending the goods from. Now, the other aspect that I think that we need to do, and I wanted my senior comrade from Guta President to support, to be in that lane so that we can advocate adequately, is not about we're not afraid of competition, but we are afraid of the cost of producing a product in this country. The cost, so far as African Continental Free Trade is concerned, is there a specialty if one wants to register a product with Standards Authority or FDA or GSA to export within AfTA? If I were to develop a product that will go to AU, probably the fee that I will pay in registering and certification is higher. But because we want to have opportunity within the 1-point-something million market, that Ghana, and of course our president is serious about this, whether we like it or not, it has come to stay, it's not going back. Did the government consider to register a company who want to take advantage of AfTA by sending his or her product to that country? Again, I remember the government in 2017 talked about Ghana Beyond 8 and 1D, 1F. And some of the banks, just like put to our friend from the banking association.
Make it brief, we need to be going.
Where some banks came out boldly to announce the amount of quantum of money that was allocated to support 1D, 1F. As we speak now, the SMEs, if they want to take opportunity, what has been the banking involvement? And he has just made it to understand that they have little, they were not involved so much. And for that matter, in terms of financing, we did not get the seriousness that attached to this AfTA as compared to when 1D, 1F came into being. What am I talking about? 1D, 1F was just within Ghana here, but we have a larger market which we need to support our institutions. So what will be the interest rate for someone who wants to borrow from the Ghanaian commercial banks to do business, as we talk about interest rate, so far the interest rate is concerned? Okay. Because other than that, we will have the National Secretariat here, we will have government is supporting everything, but at the end of the day, other countries' jurisdiction would come to enjoy us, and then Ghanaians would rather be slaves to. Okay. Meanwhile, we need to take the opportunity. So cost of borrowing is one, cost of utility tariff is two, and how well involved do they involve especially the small agro growers in this country so far as African Continental Free Trade is concerned. Then last but not the least, well, the Standards Authority...
Hold on, Samson, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much.
Unfortunately, that's what time would allow us. It's sad that we have to end it this way, because we have to go off TV. I'm sure we can continue the conversation here. But yes, we've been live on the JoyNews channel, on the IMANI-GIZ reforms, on how the African Continental what the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement means for Ghanaian businesses. We're grateful to all of you for joining us, to our panelists, and to those of you who watched us this afternoon. Thank you so much. This is just the beginning of a series of conversations on the African Continental Free Trade Area. So keep watching this space. My name is Winston Am. On behalf of all of us, thank you very much for watching.
Namwa there from Alisa Hotel. There is IMANI Africa in partnership with GIZ holding that dialogue series on the African Continental Free Trade Area, and what it means to Ghanaian businesses. Time has run out on us.